Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Monica Alba, and if it's Tuesday, voters are voting. Today, 6 states are holding primary elections, including a pair of Democratic races in Wisconsin and Minnesota that are set to test the staying power of the progressive movement after a string of wins this primary season, including last week in Michigan. In the Wisconsin governor's race, polls show Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong with a lead in a wild primary that's seen candidates drop out and get back in the race. David Crowley, who recently re-entered the race and now has the endorsement of Wisconsin's outgoing Governor Tony Evers, spoke with NBC's Shaq Brewster about his closing message.
With this Democratic primary, what does it come down to? What's the key difference between you and your opponent?
Well, I think there's a lot of key differences. One, I mean, we're going to need someone who can build the necessary coalitions and speak to unity, not necessarily division. We don't need to continue to divide our party or divide our state or our country.
Do you think she divides the party?
I think that right now we have a lot of people where the emotions are extremely high right now, and people are tearing down other candidates in order to focus on their own.
Meanwhile, Hong is pitching a message of change while trying to distance herself from some of her previous left-wing positions, which Democrats worry could hurt her chances in the general election.
Be scary, but when I get scared, I look to the voters who remind me every day that not only are we deserving of change, but they get to be a part of making that change. This election belongs to the voters, and we'll let the voters decide.
What do you say to voters who see those comments and the back and forth about them and say it's either disqualifying or that in your clarification, you're trying to have it both ways?
What's disqualifying is Tom Tiffany still will not say who won the 2020 election. What's disqualifying is that he has voted to send tax dollars to forever wars, for gas prices going up, for grocery stores growing up. He doesn't care about Wisconsinites. He cares about the Trump administration, who he will put Trump first, and Wisconsin deserves a governor that will put Wisconsinites first.
In the Democratic Senate primary in Minnesota, Congresswoman Angie Craig is also making an electability pitch to voters as she faces Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Flanagan is running on a more progressive message and has criticized Craig for significant outside spending on her campaign's behalf.
We put this Senate seat at risk if the Lieutenant Governor is our candidate in November. I'm certainly making the contrast that I'm the experienced person in Washington who has a track record already of taking on Donald Trump and getting bills passed that make a difference in Minnesotans' lives.
This is up to the people of Minnesota if they want to send someone who's, beholden to corporate special interests, or if they want to send someone who's beholden only to Minnesotans.
And on the Republican side of things, a South Carolina special election to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham on November's ballot could prove a test of the power of the president's endorsement. He's thrown his support behind the former senator's sister, Darlene Graham, in a crowded primary. Earlier today, Graham telling NBC's Ryan Nobles she expects this race to go to a runoff.
I expect to be in a runoff in 2 weeks. I feel confident that I will win.
Senator, what would you say to folks that are saying that you're just being handed this seat?
I don't see it that way. I'm not being handed this seat. I realize that I have to earn voters. So I'm working really hard to do that.
And joining me now is our NBC News team chief data analyst Steve Kornacki's at the big board with what he's watching for tonight. Shaq Brewster is covering the Wisconsin governor's race from Madison. And Charles Benson, chief political reporter at our Milwaukee affiliate WTMJ, is in Milwaukee, where the city's absentee ballots are being counted. And chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles is covering it all in South Carolina. Thanks to you all for being here on this election day. Steve, let's start with you. What are you watching for in these progressive versus establishment races tonight?
Yeah, well, let's start in sort of the feature contest in that genre, and that is that Democratic primary for governor here in Wisconsin. A couple things. First of all, if you look at Hong and you look at where her path to victory would be tonight, I think you just think back a week ago to what we saw in Michigan with Al Sayed winning the Senate primary there. His vote, his support correlated pretty closely to the median age in counties in Michigan. The younger the median age, the better he was doing. The more you had like college towns, college areas, that's where he was getting running up the score, doing the best. So take a look here in Wisconsin. You got the mother lode of sort of the college town. That's Madison, Dane County. Dane's going to churn out more votes than any other county in Wisconsin probably tonight in this primary. You'd expect Hong to be doing very well there. You'd expect also some sort of smaller college towns. Think of Portage, you can think La Crosse County, places where you've got branches of the state university where the median age tends younger. That's where she's going to be looking to run up the score there. One other thing that I'm looking at here, though, is the interesting dynamic you got at it of how topsy-turvy this race has been with candidates getting in, candidates getting out. David Crowley, who is now her main opponent, the establishment, if they have any chance of stopping Hong, it's going to be with Crowley tonight. Remember, Crowley was out of the race for a little over a week in July. Then he got back in. He got back in because Sarah Rodriguez, lieutenant governor, got out. The key point, though, is that as all of this drama was playing out in July and this field was being shaped and reshaped and candidates were getting in and candidates were getting out, something around 140,000 votes were cast in that month, in the month of July, by mail. Now, not all 140,000 of those are going to be for the Democratic primary, but we know that Democrats tend to vote by mail a lot more than Republicans. That means a big chunk of the vote in this Democratic primary was cast before this became the Hong-Crowley race that it essentially now is. So if Crowley has gotten a bunch of momentum late in this campaign to make this a game with Hong tonight, getting that sort of establishment wing to coalesce behind him, there's a world where he could get close but fall just short. And those 140,000 vote by mail that were cast long before this dynamic materialized could loom big.
That's fascinating. We'll definitely be watching for that. Tonight, Stephen, of course, we will see what happens in South Carolina. Do you think that this crowded Republican field could complicate a path to victory?
Yeah, I mean, look, you get an open Senate seat in a state like South Carolina, you get it anywhere, you're going to get a lot of interest. So you take a look here on the Republican side. The question here really is if somebody were to get an outright majority tonight, obviously they win, but it's the runoff likely. Who's getting first? Who's getting second? Most expect Darlene Graham will make that runoff. So the question then would be second place. And you've got here, just go through this, Ralph Norman is a congressman. Russell Fry's a congressman. Mark Sanford, a former governor, a former congressman, some other candidates as well. Just keep in mind sort of the regional variances here. Norman, okay, he just ran for governor unsuccessfully in the Republican primary. His base is right up here, York County around Rock Hill. It extends a bit into the upstate. A lot of Republican votes right there. Go to the sort of the Myrtle Beach area, the PD region, they call it. That is where Fry's congressional district is. So you look for him to run up the score right there. Sanford, when he was in Congress, it was right here along the coast, but he might have a broader sort of a base of support, too, from his days as governor. But there's sort of the regional question right here. Is one of these candidates going to sort of get more of a bounce out of their home region that could get them potentially into that second place? But I think the expectation with Graham is her support may be more evenly, widely distributed around the state. So then the question is from these sort of regional candidates here, which one can pack the most punch from their neck of the woods?
Yeah, and we'll see about that runoff in just a couple of weeks. Steve Kornacki, thank you so much for all of your expertise there. And, of course, tune in tonight starting at 7 p.m. Eastern to the Kornacki Cam for special coverage of the results as they come in. That is on NBCNews.com and on YouTube. Plus, for even more expert analysis, scan the QR code on your screen right now and subscribe to the Data Dive with Steve Kornacki. Now let's head out to Wisconsin, where NBC's Shaq Brewster is there on the ground, as well as Charles Benson, as voters are doing what they do best, voting. Shaq, let's start with you. You've been talking to those voters in Wisconsin all day. What are they telling you about this primary?
Yeah, Monica, I'll tell you, it's definitely stressing out a lot of voters who I've been talking with. Some telling me as they left the polling booth that it's something that they didn't decide on until they were in that polling booth and making that final decision. It's a classic head versus heart battle for some of them. I want you to listen to some of the conversations I've been having with folks as they cast that ballot for this contentious race for governor. Why did you vote for David Crowley?
Because I think he can win.
A lot of people think she's like too radical, or not electable. But I think that she actually just knows what she wants to do, and she doesn't really play by what donors think she should do.
We're both really interested in the DSA candidate, but we're also both pretty worried about beating Tom Tiffany.
I think in a primary you get to vote for your conscience, and in the major election you tend to go for the candidate who is the lesser of two evils, and so I voted for the candidate that was with my conscience.
So you voted Hong?
I voted
Hong.
Hong.
It's a divided household. Let me dig a little bit. Who did you vote for?
I voted for Crowley because I am a risk-averse person. And I really was reading a lot about, like, who has the chances to beat Tom Tiffany in the larger election.
I apologize to that couple afterwards for maybe pushing a little bit too hard, but it's that conversation that so many Democrats are having here, and you got a sense of that in our conversation there. For Crowley, he's saying that Hong essentially isn't ready for the limelight. We saw the fact that she's had to walk back some of her previous comments, including those involving canceling Thanksgiving. She says she no longer wants to do that. Hong is saying it's about the issues. She believes her issues are popular. Based on the conversations, they're popular among Democrats. The question is, do enough Democrats believe that they'll be popular with the general electorate when it gets to November?
A house divided. I love that, Shaq. Thanks for that. And also, we heard some of Crowley and Hong's closing message, but whoever wins will have to basically unite both wings of the party. So do the candidates have a plan for that part?
Yeah, they do. And specifically, the Democratic Party here has a plan for that. We know that there's going to be a unity breakfast that will take place tomorrow. You'll have the nominees for governor, for lieutenant governor, all there with some of Wisconsin's popular Democratic elected leaders, including Senator Tammy Baldwin. But we know it's not just going to be that breakfast. They're going to have 5 different days of events, dozens of stops across the state trying to preach that message of unity. I think one thing that's unique for Wisconsin compared to what we saw in Michigan just last week is while the primary definitely got contentious and you have a lot of messaging, a lot of focus on the front runner, it hasn't been as divisive. When we saw them on the debate stage, they were not slinging attacks at one another. This did not get deeply personal. Many of the voters I talked to said they would consider another candidate if that other candidate does win the nomination. So there's less work that needs to be done than we've seen in other states. But without a doubt, there's going to need to be that focus on unifying the party here if they want to have a good shot at taking down Tom Tiffany in November.
Shaq, Brewster there. Thank you so much for your on-the-ground reporting. As always, Charles, I want to turn to you now over in Milwaukee. What's happening where you are? Take us behind the scenes.
Yeah, so I'm at a place called Central Count here in Milwaukee. This is where they count those early ballots that Steve talked about, the mail-in ballots and then, of course, the in-person absentee ballots. So about 20,000 ballots here that will help determine the outcome of the race. You know, we sort of have put this election around Francesca Hong versus David Crowley, Dane County versus Milwaukee County, where I am. And yes, Francesca Hong has built a solid base, not only in Dane County, but throughout the state. She's run a grassroots campaign using the phrase, a campaign for the many and not the money. So she's hoping the dividends of doing all of those early campaign organizing and door knocking and holding meetings will pay dividends. David Crowley coming into this race really late after being in it, drops out, gets back in with a key endorsement from Governor Tony Evers, the most popular politician in the state of Wisconsin based on job approval numbers. The other thing is, when I talk about Dane County versus Milwaukee County, this is where David Crowley has been elected twice as the county executive. It is the biggest county in the state of Wisconsin. So is he able to sort of overcome what the polls have said and climb this big hill that showed people still undecided? Can he make up that gap that was showing at least a potential here with that many undecideds? Can he close the race? That's what I'll be looking for tonight when the results come in. Milwaukee County, a big vote number versus Dane County, also a powerhouse for Democrats. Monica?
And Charles, how key are independent voters going to be heading into the general election there?
I think that's going to tell the story. Look, I think the Democrats are going to find a way to unite around whoever is the nominee. The Republicans have been united around Tom Tiffany, the likely Republican nominee. He does have a primary, but he was endorsed by President Trump. So each side will probably rally around their candidates. But it's the independents who are maybe going to be a little bit leery about a Democratic socialist, independents who are going to be leery about a President Trump endorsement. And so both sides are going to have to weigh those options as they fight for the independents, which I think could determine the outcome of this election, which is always close, as you know, in battleground Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's right. They often do. This will be a really interesting part of the race to watch for that test, as you laid out. Charles, thank you so much for your reporting. And turning now to South Carolina, where Ryan has the view from Columbia. Ryan, Darlene Graham told you she's feeling confident about a win, even if there is going to be a potential runoff. What are voters telling you?
Yeah, first, Monica, she's confident about a win, but she's also pretty confident that it is going to a runoff, which means it's likely not to cross that 50% threshold today, and it will mean that she'll have at least 2 more weeks of work ahead of her. And part of the reason that she's going to have 2 more weeks worth of work is that voters are a little bit skeptical that she might just being handed this seat by President Trump and by Republican Party leaders. Listen to what one voter told me this morning about that exact topic.
Like somebody that represents the people, and like somebody that is not necessarily given the opportunity just because of who their name is or who they are.
So I assume that means Darlene Graham. Are you worried that she's just being handed the seat?
Yeah, I do. I think that, I mean, I don't know what her past voting history is or what her issues are really. I understand that she's lost a brother and lost someone who was very special to her, and I sympathize with that, but at the same time, I don't think that it's necessary just to give it to her.
And certainly it's anecdotal, but we did talk to quite a few voters who had a very similar sentiment, Monica. They like President Trump. They appreciate the fact that he's endorsed her. They like Lindsey Graham. They liked him, thought he represented their state well, but they just feel like they don't know enough about Darlene Graham to give her this seat for the next 6 years. We'll have to see how that translates in tonight's vote totals tonight.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that a little bit more, because as you say, voters are a bit unsure about her track record, but she has been serving as the appointed senator from South Carolina for this short window of time. So does what we've seen so far on Capitol Hill just over the past month give us any clues into where she may differ from her late brother?
Well, she's certainly making that argument to voters. She today touted the fact that she got the Russia sanctions bill over the line in her late brother's honor. She talked about her commitment to trying to get the president's voting changes bill to the Senate floor, even though that didn't happen. But what is interesting is the way she's making this pitch to South Carolina voters. She's acknowledged that what her brother was known for was his national security expertise, but she said that that's not going to be her focus. She's way more concerned about domestic issues like the rising cost of everyday goods. And that's put her into a tight spot because she has the president's support, but yet things like gas prices are still sky high. So she wants to make this about kitchen table issues. She's dealing with the legacy of her brother. She's dealing with an unpopular president. So all of those things are playing a factor in what we're seeing here in terms of voters heading into the polls tonight.
And Brian, you just mentioned the president. Of course, he has endorsed Darlene Graham. Do you think this is a true test of his endorsement strength with this race?
Make no mistake, every Republican candidate would like to have this endorsement. But what we're seeing play out here today is it's not going to be the end-all, be-all, at least at this stage. If Darlene Graham gets over the hump into the runoff and it's a one-on-one matchup, it's likely that Trump's endorsement will be more than enough to get her over the finish line. But she's got to get through this first stage first. Monica.
Ryan Noble's covering a race that would have looked a lot differently just some weeks ago with all of these recent changes, of course. Ryan Nobles, thank you so much, as always.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.